The rain hammered against the glass as Mike Craig stood in the shadows of his penthouse, watching the city lights blur into darkness. He'd built an empire on cold calculations and ruthless decisions, but tonight, he was about to make the most reckless proposition of his life. Anita Warren, brilliant, untouchable, and completely off-limits, had become his obsession. One offer, one night, one chance to break every rule he'd ever made. But when money can't buy what the heart wants, and desire bleeds into something deeper, how do you walk away? This is a story of forbidden attraction, dangerous choices, and a love that could destroy everything they've worked for. Will Anita say yes to the unthinkable? And if she does, can either of them survive what comes next? Subscribe now and hit that notification bell, because this story will leave you breathless. Drop a comment below. Would you take the offer? The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing the empty executive floor of Craig Industries. Anita Warren stepped out, her heels clicking against the marble as she balanced a stack of quarterly reports against her hip. The building should have been deserted at 9 p.m. on a Friday, but the light streaming from Mike Craig's corner office told her otherwise. She'd known he'd still be here. He was always here, haunting these halls like a ghost who'd forgotten how to leave. She walked past the rows of darkened cubicles, feeling the weight of exhaustion settling into her bones. 3 years at Craig Industries, and she'd clawed her way from administrative assistant to senior analyst through nothing but hard work and relentless determination. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. You're going to make something of yourself, baby girl. You're going to be somebody. Every late night, every skipped meal, every moment of doubt had been worth it to prove those words true. The glass walls of Mike's office revealed him standing at the window, one hand shoved in his pocket, the other holding a tumbler of what she assumed was whiskey. His tie was loosened, his jacket discarded somewhere, and even from this distance, she could see the tension radiating from his shoulders. Something was wrong. She'd worked closely enough with him over the past year to recognize the signs. The clenched jaw, the rigid posture, the way he stared at nothing as if trying to burn holes through reality itself. Anita knocked on the doorframe, though the door stood open. Mr. Craig? I have the reports you requested. He turned slowly, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. Mike Craig was conventionally handsome in that polished, privileged way. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair always perfectly styled, eyes the color of winter storms. But tonight, those eyes held something raw and dangerous that sent warning signals firing through her nervous system. Anita. Her name left his lips like a prayer or a curse. She couldn't tell which. You're still here. You asked for these by Monday. I wanted to make sure they were thorough. She crossed the threshold, setting the stack on his desk with deliberate care. Is everything all right? He laughed, and the sound held no humor whatsoever. All right. That's an interesting word choice. He took a long drink, draining the glass before setting it down hard enough to make her flinch. Did you see the news today? She had. Everyone had. Vanessa Morrison, Mike's ex-fiancée and daughter of a prominent New Jersey senator, had given an interview to a major tabloid, detailing their relationship and subsequent breakup with vicious precision. The article painted Mike as cold, emotionally unavailable, and obsessed with control. It had gone viral within hours, spawning endless social media commentary and think pieces about wealthy men and their inability to maintain meaningful relationships. I don't pay attention to gossip, Anita said carefully. Liar. But his lips curved into something that might have been a smile under different circumstances. You're too smart not to keep your finger on the pulse of everything that could affect this company. It's one of the reasons I value you. Value. The word hung between them, loaded with implications she didn't want to examine. She'd felt his eyes on her before, during meetings, in the elevator, across the conference room. Those moments when she'd look up and catch him watching her with an intensity that made her skin feel too tight. She'd told herself it meant nothing, that men like Mike Craig looked at everything they wanted to possess with that same hungry focus. The stock will recover, she said, keeping her voice professional. It always does. This will blow over in a week, maybe two. Some celebrity will have a meltdown, and everyone will forget about Vanessa Morrison's opinions on your emotional availability. Will they? He moved closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with whiskey. Tell me something, Anita. Do you think I'm capable of love? Of real connection? The question was so unexpected, so raw, that she took a step back. Mr. Craig, I don't think that's inappropriate. Mike. He cut her off, still advancing until only the desk separated them. When it's just us, call me Mike. And answer the question. You're honest to a fault. It's refreshing and occasionally infuriating. So tell me, do you think Vanessa was right? Am I just a cold bastard who uses people and throws them away? Anita's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't the man she worked for, the calculating CEO who made billion-dollar decisions before breakfast. This was someone unraveling, someone human and messy and far too close to her personal space. She should leave. She should make an excuse and walk out of this office and pretend this conversation never happened. Instead, she met his gaze directly. I think you're a man who's been hurt and learned to protect himself. I think vulnerability terrifies you more than any boardroom battle or market crash. And I think Vanessa Morrison was too focused on what you could give her to ever see who you actually were. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe gratitude, maybe something darker. You see too much. It's my job to analyze things. Is that all I am to you? Something to analyze. The question felt like a trap, like standing at the edge of a cliff in the dark. You're my boss. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters. He circled the desk, and now there was nothing between them except air and terrible choices. Mike stood so close, she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. Her brain screamed at her to move, to put distance between them, but her feet stayed rooted to the expensive carpet. I want to make you an offer, he said quietly. If this is about a promotion, it's not about work. His hand lifted, and for one terrifying moment, she thought he might touch her face, but he let it fall back to his side. I'll give you $50,000 for one night. No strings, no expectations beyond that. Just one night where I can forget about Vanessa and the media circus and the fact that everyone thinks they know who I am. The words hit her like a physical blow. Anita stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth as shock and fury warred inside her chest. You're offering me money. To sleep with you. To spend the night with me, he corrected, as if the distinction mattered. To let me feel something real for once, even if it's temporary. Get away from me. Her voice shook with rage. How dare you? How dare you stand there and reduce me to some transaction you can buy with a check? Anita. No. She grabbed her purse from where she'd set it on the chair, her hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped it. I have worked my ass off in this company. I earned every promotion, every commendation, every single opportunity through merit and dedication. And you think I'm the kind of woman you can just buy? That my dignity has a price tag. I didn't mean it like that. He ran a hand through his hair, destroying its careful styling. God, I'm saying this all wrong. I don't think you're, what, a prostitute? Because that's exactly what you're implying. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wouldn't give him that. I'm a black woman working in a predominantly white, male industry. Do you have any idea how hard I've had to fight to be taken seriously? To be seen as intelligent and capable instead of just decorative? And now you've confirmed every ugly stereotype, every whispered suspicion about why someone like me would advance so quickly. Guilt flashed across his face. That's not what I think about you. Jesus, Anita, you're the most brilliant analyst I've ever worked with. Your insights have shaped half our strategic decisions in the past year. This has nothing to do with your professional value. Then what does it have to do with? She demanded. Loneliness? Desperation? Some twisted need to prove Vanessa wrong by purchasing human connection. All of that, he admitted, and the raw honesty in his voice stopped her retreat. I'm tired of being empty. I'm tired of women who want my money or my name or my connections. I'm tired of pretending I don't feel anything. And you? He looked at her with such naked longing that her breath caught. You're real. You're honest. You challenge me. You make me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years. And I know offering money was crass and insulting, but I don't know how else to bridge the gap between us. I don't know how to ask for what I want without putting everything on the table. This isn't on the table. She gestured wildly between them. This isn't something you negotiate like a merger or acquisition. Human beings aren't commodities. I know that. He took a step toward her, and she held up a hand to stop him. Anita, please. I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to offer you something that would be meaningful to both of us. You could pay off your mother's medical bills. I've seen the collection notices on your desk when you thought no one was looking. You could stop eating ramen for dinner every night. You could breathe. The fact that he'd noticed those details made something crack in her chest. Her mother's diabetes had gotten worse, the medications more expensive, and the insurance less cooperative. She'd been juggling payment plans and second jobs, and the constant gnawing fear that she couldn't keep all the plates spinning. $50,000 would change everything. It would give her mother quality care, would let Anita sleep without nightmares about unpaid bills and final notices. But at what cost? I can't believe you're using my mother's illness to manipulate me, she said, her voice breaking. I'm not. He closed his eyes, seeming to gather himself. You're right. That was low. I'm sorry. Forget I said anything. Forget this whole conversation happened. How? She laughed bitterly. How do I forget that my boss just offered me money for sex? How do I come to work on Monday and pretend everything's normal? How do I sit in meetings with you and not remember this moment? I don't know, he said quietly. But I'll understand if you want to transfer to a different department. I'll even write you a recommendation for another company if you want to leave entirely. I'll make sure you land somewhere better, somewhere you don't have to see me every day. The offer was generous and completely devastating. Anita had built her career at Craig Industries. She knew the systems, the players, the opportunities. Starting over somewhere else would mean losing ground, losing time, losing the momentum she'd fought so hard to build. But staying here, working under Mike Craig after this, felt impossible. I need to go. She headed for the door, desperate for air and distance and sanity. Anita. His voice stopped her at the threshold. For what it's worth, you're the only person in my life who makes me want to be better than I am. And I'm sorry I just proved I'm not. She didn't turn around. Couldn't turn around. If she looked at him, at the genuine remorse in his eyes, she might do something incredibly stupid. So she walked out, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown to disaster. And she didn't stop until she reached her car in the parking garage. Only then, sitting in the darkness with her hands clenched on the steering wheel, did she let herself cry. The weekend passed in a blur of anger, confusion, and unwanted fantasies. Anita tried to lose herself in housework and grocery shopping and long phone calls with her mother, but Mike's offer echoed in her head like a siren song. $50,000. One night, the rational part of her brain screamed that it was wrong, that she'd be betraying every principle she'd built her life around. But another part, the part that woke at 3 a.m. calculating bills and interest rates and how long she could keep this up, whispered that maybe it was worth considering. She'd gone to college on scholarships and student loans that she was still paying off at 28. She'd worked 3 jobs to send money home when her father died and left them drowning in debt. She'd sacrificed relationships and friendships and any semblance of a normal social life to climb the corporate ladder. And now Mike Craig was offering her a shortcut, a way to solve her biggest problem with one questionable decision. The worst part was that she didn't hate him. She should hate him for making the offer, for seeing her vulnerability and exploiting it. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the loneliness in his face, the desperate need for something genuine in a life built on artifice and transactions. She'd felt that same emptiness, that same hunger for connection that went deeper than small talk and shallow pleasures. On Sunday evening, she found herself standing in front of her bathroom mirror, really looking at herself for the first time in weeks. Her dark skin glowed under the harsh light, her natural hair framing her face in careful coils she'd spent an hour perfecting. She was beautiful. She knew that objectively, had known it since high school when boys started paying attention and girls started measuring themselves against her. But beauty in the corporate world was a double-edged sword. Too attractive, and people assumed you'd slept your way up. Not attractive enough, and you were invisible. Mike had noticed her. Not just her looks, but her mind, her work, her presence. He'd promoted her twice, given her high-profile projects, listened to her ideas in meetings when other executives talked over their female colleagues. And yes, there had been attraction simmering under their professional relationship, moments when their hands brushed reaching for the same file, or when their eyes met across a conference table and held a beat too long. Was one night really so terrible? People had casual sex all the time without money being involved. At least Mike was honest about what he wanted, about the terms of engagement. He wasn't pretending to offer her a relationship or making false promises. It was a business transaction between consenting adults. Except it wasn't just business. Not really. Not when her heart raced at the thought of being alone with him. Not when she'd caught herself daydreaming about what his mouth would feel like on hers, what his hands would feel like on her skin. This wasn't some stranger offering cash for services rendered. This was a man she admired and respected and, if she was brutally honest with herself, was attracted to in ways that terrified her. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How's work, baby? You working too hard again? Always working too hard. Always pushing, striving, fighting to stay afloat." Anita typed back a cheerful lie about having a relaxing weekend, then pulled up her banking app. The numbers stared back at her in accusatory red. Past due. Insufficient funds. Payment required. She could keep struggling. She could work harder, take on freelance projects, maybe sell her car, and take public transportation. She could ask for a raise, though she'd just gotten one 6 months ago. She could keep patching the holes in a sinking ship and hope she made it to shore before everything went under. Or she could make one choice that would change everything. Her fingers moved before her brain could catch up, pulling up Mike's contact information. He'd given her his personal cell number months ago for emergencies, and she'd never once used it. This felt like an emergency of a different sort. An emergency of desperation and possibility and terrifying what-ifs. The text was simple. "Are you serious about your offer?" She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then immediately threw the phone onto her bed and paced the small bedroom like a caged animal. What was she doing? What the hell was she thinking? She could still take it back, could text again, and say she'd meant to send that to someone else, some inside joke that. Her phone chimed. Her heart stopped. Mike's response was immediate. Yes. Completely serious. Another message followed. But only if you want this. No pressure. No consequences either way. A third. I'm sorry about Friday. I handled it badly. You deserve better. Anita picked up the phone with shaking hands. Her thumbs hovered over the keyboard, typing and deleting and typing again. Finally, she settled on, I need to think about it. Take all the time you need, he wrote back. The offer stands indefinitely. She waited for more, for him to push or persuade or throw more money at the problem. But nothing else came. Just those few messages hanging in the air between them like smoke signals across an impossible distance. That night, Anita barely slept. She ran through scenarios in her head. Weighing pros and cons like this was a business decision instead of something that could potentially destroy her self-respect. By Monday morning, she still hadn't made up her mind. She dressed carefully in her most professional suit, armor against temptation, and drove to work rehearsing how she'd act when she inevitably ran into Mike. Except she didn't run into him. He wasn't in his office when she arrived, wasn't in the morning meeting she usually attended, wasn't anywhere visible on the executive floor. His assistant mentioned he'd taken personal days, something Anita had never known Mike Craig to do in 3 years. The man worked through holidays and weekends, and probably his own birthday. Personal days were not in his vocabulary. The absence felt pointed, like he was giving her space to breathe and decide without his presence clouding her judgment. It was thoughtful and frustrating in equal measure. How was she supposed to figure out what she wanted when the object of her internal debate had conveniently removed himself from the equation? Tuesday brought the same situation. Wednesday too. By Thursday, Anita was climbing the walls with indecision and unwanted worry. What if something had happened to him? What if he'd taken back the offer and was avoiding her out of embarrassment? What if she'd already waited too long and the window had closed? On Thursday evening, as she was packing up to leave, her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Anita Warren, she said professionally. Ms. Warren, this is Robert Shin from New Jersey Presbyterian Hospital. Her blood turned to ice. Is it my mother? No, ma'am. I'm calling about Michael Craig. You're listed as his emergency contact. The world tilted sideways. What? Why would I be? What happened? Is he okay? He was in a car accident Tuesday evening. Nothing life-threatening, Robert added quickly. But he sustained a concussion and some broken ribs. He's been asking for you. Would you be able to come down? Anita was already grabbing her keys. I'm on my way. The drive to the hospital took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Her mind raced with terrible possibilities, with guilt and fear and the horrible realization that Mike mattered to her more than she'd been willing to admit. She barely remembered parking or running through the lobby or demanding his room number from a startled nurse. When she burst into his room, he was sitting up in bed, one arm wrapped in a sling, bruises darkening his jaw and temple. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Anita, you idiot." She crossed the room and smacked his good shoulder, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to express her fury. "You scared the hell out of me. What were you thinking, listing me as your emergency contact? I thought something terrible had." Her voice broke, and suddenly she was crying. Great heaving sobs that she couldn't control. Mike reached for her with his good arm, pulling her down to sit on the edge of the bed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. The accident wasn't serious, just some drunk driver running a red light. I'm fine, really. You have broken ribs and a concussion. That's not fine." She wiped at her face angrily, hating that she was falling apart in front of him. "And you still haven't explained why I'm your emergency contact instead of, I don't know, your actual family?" Something shuddered in his expression. "My parents are dead. My brother Peter is in London, and we barely speak. You're the only person I trust, Anita. The only person who gives a damn about me rather than what I represent." The raw honesty broke something inside her. She looked at this powerful, wealthy man sitting bruised and vulnerable in a hospital bed, and she saw past the money and status to the lonely human underneath. Mike Craig had everything except the things that actually mattered: connection, trust, someone to call when the world fell apart. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I'll do it. Your offer. One night." She met his eyes directly, needing him to understand the weight of what she was agreeing to. "But I have conditions. Subscribe to see what happens next." Will Anita go through with it? What are her conditions? Drop a comment with your predictions below. Mike stared at her like he wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. "Anita, you don't have to decide now. I'm in a hospital bed, probably on painkillers, and this is hardly the appropriate setting for." "I've been thinking about it for days," she interrupted. "And seeing you here, realizing you could have died, and I would have spent the rest of my life wondering what if." She took a shaky breath. "I'm not doing this just for the money, Mike. I want you to know that. If I'm going to do this, it has to be because part of me wants to, not just because I'm desperate." "Do you?" His voice was rough. "Want to?" The answer should have been no. The answer should have been a clear, resounding rejection of everything this represented. But Anita had spent her whole life being practical and cautious and doing the right thing. And where had it gotten her? Drowning in debt, lonely, working herself to exhaustion with no end in sight. "Yes," she admitted. "I'm attracted to you. I have been for a while, even though I tried to ignore it. And maybe this is the worst decision I'll ever make. But I'd rather regret something I did than something I was too afraid to try." Mike's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "Tell me your conditions." "No kissing," she said immediately. "Kissing is intimate. It means something. Whatever happens, we keep that line." He nodded slowly. "What else?" "This doesn't affect my job. No special treatment, no favoritism, no using this as leverage. At work, nothing changes." "Agreed. And after it's over, we never talk about it again. It happened once, and then it's done. No repeats, no complications, no messy feelings." Something flickered in his eyes, disappointment maybe, but he nodded. "When?" "Friday night. Give yourself one more day to recover. And then..." She trailed off, suddenly terrified by what she'd agreed to. "I'll come to your place at 8. "Anita." He said her name like a prayer. "You can change your mind anytime. Even if you show up and decide you can't go through with it, that's okay. The money is yours regardless. I'm not taking your money if I don't follow through. Then consider it a gift. A thank you for dropping everything to come check on me. For being the only person in my life who actually cares if I live or die." "Don't say that." She squeezed his hand, the one not in a sling. "You matter, Mike. Not your money, or your company, or your status. You as a person matter." He looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language, like the concept of mattering simply for existing was completely alien to him. It broke her heart a little, made her understand why he'd made that offer in the first place. Mike Craig was drowning in loneliness, surrounded by people who wanted things from him but never saw him. Maybe she could give him something real, even if only for one night. Maybe they could give each other something real. She stood up, suddenly needing distance before she did something stupid like crawl into that hospital bed with him. "I should go. Let you rest." "Anita." He caught her hand, holding on like a lifeline. "Thank you. For coming. For saying yes. For everything." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and walked out before the tears could start again. Friday arrived with the inevitability of a storm on the horizon. Anita went through her workday in a daze, barely able to focus on spreadsheets and reports. Mike was back in the office, looking only slightly worse for wear with fading bruises and careful movements that suggested his ribs still hurt. They didn't speak beyond necessary professional exchanges, but she felt his eyes on her constantly, a tangible weight that made her skin prickle with awareness. At 5 p.m., she left early, something she never did, claiming a doctor's appointment. Her hands shook as she drove home, as she showered and shaved and moisturized every inch of skin. She'd gone shopping after leaving the hospital, spending money she didn't have on expensive lingerie and a dress that probably cost more than her rent. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it right, on her own terms. The dress was deep emerald green, the color rich against her dark skin, with a neckline that hinted at cleavage without being overtly sexual. She left her hair natural, the coils framing her face in what she hoped was an attractive rather than disheveled way. Minimal makeup. She wanted to look like herself, not some fantasy he'd constructed in his head. At 7:45, she stood in front of her mirror one last time. The woman looking back was beautiful and terrified and determined. This was happening. This was really happening. Mike's penthouse was in one of New Jersey's most exclusive buildings, all glass and steel overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Anita had never been here before, had only heard other employees whisper about the legendary space. She rode the private elevator with her heart in her throat, clutching the small, overnight bag she'd packed with more care than she'd ever given anything. The doors opened directly into his apartment, and her breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city glittering below. The space itself was minimalist and masculine. All clean lines and expensive furniture, and absolutely no personal touches. No photos, no knickknacks, no evidence that anyone actually lived here. It was beautiful and utterly soulless. Mike stood by those massive windows, wearing dark jeans and a simple black sweater instead of his usual suits. He looked younger like this, more approachable, though the tension in his shoulders was visible even from across the room. "You came," he said, and she heard the surprise in his voice. "I said I would." Anita set down her bag, suddenly self-conscious in her expensive dress. "Nice place. It's a mausoleum." He walked toward her slowly, like approaching a skittish animal. "I bought it because the broker said it was what successful people owned. But I've never felt at home here." "Where do you feel at home?" "I don't know anymore. Maybe nowhere." The sadness in those words made her chest ache. Anita crossed the distance between them, closing the gap until they stood close enough to touch. "Let's make a deal. For tonight, we both get to be real. No roles, no expectations, no pretending. Just two people who are tired of being lonely. That's not part of our agreement. I'm amending it." She reached up, letting her fingers trail along his jaw, feeling the stubble that suggested he hadn't shaved today. "I don't want to sleep with my boss, Mike. I want to sleep with you, the person under all the armor." His hand came up to cover hers, pressing it against his face. "I don't know if I remember how to be that person." "Then let's figure it out together." He led her to the living room, and they sat on his obscenely expensive couch with the city spread out before them like a promise. Mike opened a bottle of wine, something Italian that probably cost more than her car, and poured them each a glass. They didn't talk about the transaction that had brought them here. Instead, they talked about everything else. He told her about growing up wealthy but emotionally bankrupt, about parents who measured love in trust funds and academic achievements, about his younger brother Peter, charming and manipulative, who'd always resented Mike's position as the golden child, about building Craig Industries from his father's failing manufacturing business into the tech empire it was today, driven by the need to prove he was more than just a name and inheritance. She told him about Jersey City, about a childhood rich in love but poor in resources, about her father's death from a heart attack when she was 16, about stepping up to help her mother keep the family afloat, about scholarships and student loans and the constant pressure to be twice as good to get half as far, about the exhaustion of always being on, always proving, always fighting. "I'm tired," she admitted, finishing her second glass of wine. "I'm so tired of being strong all the time." "Then don't be." Mike set down his own glass and shifted closer until their knees touched. "Not tonight. Tonight you get to just exist. Is that what you want? For me to just exist? I want you to be here, present with me." Everything else is negotiable. The wine had loosened something in her chest, made her bold enough to ask, "What did you think would happen tonight? When you made that offer, what did you imagine?" He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. "Honestly, I didn't think that far ahead. I just knew I needed something real, something that wasn't tangled up in expectations and game playing. I needed to feel human again. And you thought sex would do that? I thought connection would do that. Sex is just one form of connection, but it doesn't have to be the only one." Anita's heart hammered against her ribs. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we have all night. And maybe we spend it talking. Maybe we fall asleep watching movies. Maybe we do exactly what we planned. But whatever happens, I just want you here, real and present, without all the bullshit that usually fills my life." It was such an unexpectedly vulnerable statement that Anita felt tears prick her eyes. This powerful, untouchable man was offering her something more valuable than money. Honesty, openness, a glimpse behind the carefully constructed walls. "Dance with me," she said suddenly. "What? Dance with me? Right now? No music, no fancy moves. Just dancing because we can." A slow smile spread across his face, transforming it completely. "You're insane." "Probably. But I want to remember this night as something more than a transaction. I want to remember laughing with you, being silly, having fun. Don't you?" He stood, offering his hand. "Careful with the ribs, remember." She took his hand, letting him pull her up, and then they were moving together in his living room with the city as their audience. It was clumsy and awkward and completely perfect. Mike wasn't a particularly good dancer, and his injuries made him stiff, but none of that mattered. What mattered was the way he looked at her, like she was the only real thing in his entire universe. They swayed together, and Anita let herself relax into his arms, her head resting carefully against his uninjured shoulder. He smelled like expensive cologne and something uniquely him, and she breathed it in like a drug. "I think I'm in trouble," he murmured against her hair. "Why?" "Because one night isn't going to be enough." Her heart seized in her chest. That wasn't part of the deal. That wasn't what they'd agreed to. But as they moved together in the darkness, with nothing but city lights and honesty between them, Anita couldn't bring herself to disagree. Make sure to like this video if you're hooked. Let's see if we can hit 1,000 likes. The night stretched on in a haze of conversation and wine and the kind of intimacy that had nothing to do with physical touch. They moved to his bedroom eventually, but only to sit on the edge of his massive bed and keep talking. Mike told her about Vanessa, about how she'd wanted the image of him rather than the reality, about dates that felt like performances, sex that felt mechanical, a relationship that existed more on paper than in private. "I thought I loved her," he admitted. "But looking back, I think I just loved the idea of not being alone anymore, of having someone to come home to, even if that someone didn't really know me. That's heartbreaking. It's pathetic." "No." Anita turned to face him fully, taking his face in both hands. "It's human. We all want to be known, Mike. We all want someone who sees past the surface to the messy, complicated truth underneath. That's not pathetic. That's just being alive." He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing. "I've never told anyone that before. Never admitted that I was lonely rather than just selective. You're allowed to be lonely. You're allowed to want connection. There's no shame in that. Then why do I feel so ashamed? Because you've been taught that needing people makes you weak. That vulnerability is a liability. That admitting you're hurting is the same as admitting defeat." Her thumb stroked across his cheekbones. "But you're wrong. It takes more strength to be honest about your pain than to hide behind walls and pretend you don't feel anything." "How did you get so wise?" "Therapy. Lots and lots of therapy." He laughed, and the sound was startled and genuine. "Really? Really? After my dad died, I was a mess. Angry at the world, guilty for being alive when he wasn't, terrified that I'd never be enough to fill the hole he left. My mom made me see someone, this incredible woman named Dr. Patricia, who taught me that feelings aren't weaknesses. They're just information, signals telling us what we need. And what do your feelings tell you right now?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibility and danger. Anita knew the smart answer, the safe answer. She should say she felt grateful for the opportunity to help her mother, that she was treating this as a business arrangement, that feelings weren't part of the equation. But hadn't she demanded honesty? Hadn't she asked for them both to be real tonight? "I feel scared," she admitted. "Because I like you more than I should. Because this started as something transactional, and I can already feel it becoming something else. Because when I got that call from the hospital, I was terrified in a way that has nothing to do with professional concern. Mike's eyes opened, and the intensity in them made her breath catch. Anita, let me finish. She dropped her hands, but didn't move away. I also feel alive. More alive than I've felt in years. You make me want to take risks, to stop being so careful all the time. And that's dangerous for someone like me, someone who's had to fight for every opportunity, who can't afford to make mistakes. This isn't a mistake. You don't know that. We don't know that. This could blow up in spectacular fashion. I could lose my job, my reputation, everything I've worked for. I won't let that happen. You can't control everything, Mike. That's what you need to understand. Sometimes life happens regardless of how much money you have or how much power you wield. Sometimes you just have to make a choice and hope it works out. He reached for her hand, threading their fingers together. Then let's make choices we can live with. Choices that feel right even if they're risky. Is that what this feels like to you? Right. Terrifyingly right. Like standing at the edge of a cliff and knowing you're about to jump, but doing it anyway, because the alternative is staying stuck forever. They sat in silence for a moment, hands clasped, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Finally, Anita stood, pulling him up with her. Show me where you keep your comfortable clothes. Because if we're doing this, I'm not spending the night in this dress and heels. Something shifted in his expression, relief mixed with disappointment. Maybe. You want to change? I want to be comfortable. I want to stop performing. She met his eyes directly. Unless you prefer the fantasy version? The dressed-up woman who looks like she belongs in your world. I prefer you. He led her to his closet, a space larger than her entire bedroom, and pulled out a t-shirt that would probably drown her. This okay? Perfect. He turned away while she changed, the gesture unexpectedly sweet. Anita stripped off the expensive dress, the elaborate lingerie underneath, and pulled on his t-shirt. It fell to mid-thigh, soft from countless washings, and smelled like laundry detergent and faintly of him. When she emerged, Mike's eyes darkened. You're more beautiful like this, he said quietly. Real and unpretentious. Careful. You're starting to sound like someone who actually likes me rather than someone engaging in a transaction. Maybe I am someone who likes you. Maybe I have been for a while. The confession should have made her panic, should have sent her running for the door. Instead, it settled over her like a warm blanket, comforting and terrifying in equal measure. I'm keeping my conditions, she said. No kissing. No complicating things. Okay. And we're not having sex tonight. His eyebrows rose. We're not. No. We're going to sleep. Actually sleep. Like you said, there are other forms of connection. She climbed onto his bed, settling against the pillows with a boldness she didn't quite feel. Get in here. Mike hesitated for just a moment before joining her, careful of his ribs as he stretched out beside her. The bed was enormous, California king at least, but somehow they ended up close together, the space between their bodies measured in inches rather than feet. I don't understand, he said. I offered you $50,000 for a night, and you're just going to sleep? I'm going to give you something worth more than money. I'm going to give you honesty and presence and the experience of being with someone who isn't performing for you. Someone who just wants to exist beside you without expectations or demands. She turned on her side to face him. When was the last time you slept next to someone without it being transactional? Without wondering if they wanted something from you? His silence was answer enough. Exactly. So tonight, we sleep. We talk if we want to talk. We're just quiet if that's what feels right. But whatever happens, you get to know that someone chose to be here with you not because of what you could give them, but because they wanted to. I'm still giving you the money. We can argue about that later. She reached out, her fingers finding his in the darkness. Right now, just be here with me. He squeezed her hand like a lifeline. I'm not good at this. At vulnerability. At letting people in. I know. But you're trying, and that's what matters. They lay like that for a long time, hands clasped, breathing synchronized, the city lights painting shadows across the ceiling. Anita felt the tension slowly drain from Mike's body as he began to relax, began to trust that she wasn't going anywhere. Tell me something you've never told anyone, she whispered into the darkness. That's a dangerous request. We're being dangerous tonight. We're taking risks. So tell me something real. He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, I'm lonely. Desperately, achingly lonely. I wake up every morning in this beautiful penthouse with this successful company and millions of dollars, and I feel empty. Like I'm just going through motions, playing a role that someone else wrote for me. And I'm terrified that this is all there is, that I'll never feel truly connected to another human being again. Tears slid down Anita's cheeks, hot and unexpected. Thank you for trusting me with that. Your turn. Tell me something you've never told anyone. She took a shaky breath. I'm afraid I'm becoming my mother. Working myself to death, sacrificing everything for financial security, forgetting how to actually live. She gave up her dreams to raise me, and now I'm giving up my dreams to take care of her. And sometimes I look at my life and wonder if I'm just trapped in the same cycle, different generation. And I hate myself for feeling that way because she's my mother and I love her, but I also resent that I can't just exist without the weight of responsibility crushing me. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes me feel like one. Feelings aren't facts, remember? Your therapist taught you that. She laughed through her tears, using my own wisdom against me. That's unfair. Welcome to my world. You're too insightful for your own good. He shifted closer, and suddenly they were pressed together, his good arm wrapping around her waist. Is this okay? Yeah. She settled against his chest, careful of his injuries. This is okay. Anita. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for letting me. They drifted off like that, wrapped around each other, two lonely people finding temporary shelter in honesty and connection. Anita's last thought before sleep claimed her was that this felt dangerous in the best possible way, like standing at the edge of something that could either destroy her or set her free. Morning arrived with sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the disorienting realization that she was in Mike Craig's bed. Anita jolted awake, momentarily panicked, before the previous night came flooding back. They'd talked for hours, held each other, slept curled together like they'd been doing it for years. And somehow, nothing physical beyond hand-holding and cuddling had happened. Mike was still asleep beside her, his face relaxed in a way she'd never seen at the office. The bruises on his jaw had darkened overnight, a reminder of how fragile life could be, how quickly everything could change. She studied him in the morning light, the sharp angles of his face softened by sleep, the vulnerability in the way his hands still reached for her even unconscious. This was dangerous. This was so much more dangerous than simple physical attraction or a one-night transaction. This was connection, real and undeniable, and it scared her more than anything in her life ever had. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her face, and a smile curved his lips. You stayed. Where else would I go at? She glanced at the clock, 7 in the morning. I half expected to wake up alone. Thought maybe you'd come to your senses and run. Still might. But she didn't move, didn't pull away from the warmth of his body against hers. How are your ribs? Sore, but manageable. How are you? Confused. Terrified. Strangely happy. She laughed at herself. That's a weird combination. Tell me about it. He reached up, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. Last night was. I don't even have words for what last night was. Nothing happened. Everything happened. Don't you see that? We connected. Really connected. When was the last time you felt that with someone? She couldn't remember. Somewhere between climbing the corporate ladder and managing her mother's care, and just surviving. She'd stopped making time for relationships, for intimacy, for anything beyond work and responsibility. The last guy she'd dated had been 2 years ago, a nice accountant named James who'd eventually given up trying to compete with her 70-hour work weeks. It's been a while, she admitted. Me too. Years, if I'm honest. Everything with Vanessa was surface level. Performance art masquerading as a relationship. He shifted, wincing slightly as his ribs protested. I don't want that anymore. I want real. Mike, I know. I know we have conditions and boundaries and all the logical reasons why this should end here. But I'm asking you to consider something. He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her with heartbreaking sincerity. What if we didn't end it here? What if we explored this, whatever this is, and saw where it led? You mean date? Your employee? Your analyst who you just gave $50,000 to? I mean get to know each other outside the office. No money, no transactions, just two people who clearly have chemistry and connection seeing if it could become something more. Anita sat up, running her hands through her hair. That's insane. The optics alone would destroy both of us. People would assume I slept my way to every promotion. HR would have a field day. And your brother, your board, the media, everyone would have something to say about it. Since when do you care what people think? Since always. I'm a black woman in corporate America, Mike. What people think affects every aspect of my career, my life. I can't just ignore it like you can. He sat up too, taking her hands in his. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm approaching this from a place of privilege without considering what you'd be risking. That's not fair to you. It's not just that. She squeezed his hands, needing him to understand. I like you. I really like you. And that's exactly why this is terrifying. Because liking you means risking everything. My job, my reputation, my financial stability. And what if it doesn't work out? What if we try dating and it crashes and burns, and then I've lost everything for nothing? What if it does work out? He countered. What if this is the real thing, and we throw it away because we're too scared to take a chance? That's a really big what if. So is your alternative. What if we walk away and spend the rest of our lives wondering what we missed? She wanted to argue, wanted to list all the logical reasons why they should end this now before it got even more complicated. But looking into his eyes, seeing the hope and fear and desperate longing there, she couldn't bring herself to slam that door shut. I need time, she said finally. I need to think about this without your beautiful face and your sincere eyes and your stupid vulnerability making me want to throw caution to the wind. How much time? I don't know. A week? A month? However long it takes for me to figure out if I'm willing to risk everything for you. Something flickered in his expression. Hurt. Maybe disappointment. But he nodded. Okay. Take all the time you need. But Anita? Yeah. I'm not giving up on this. On us. I'll wait however long it takes. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brilliant and brave and beautiful. I know you challenge me and see me and make me want to be better. I know that sleeping next to you last night felt more right than anything in my entire life. That's enough to fight for. Before she could respond, before she could overthink or rationalize or talk herself out of it, Anita leaned forward and pressed her lips to his forehead. Not a kiss, technically, but intimate in its own way. A benediction, a promise, a maybe. I should go, she whispered against his skin. Before we do something we can't take back. Everything we've done is something we can't take back. We've already crossed lines, Anita. The only question is whether we keep going or turn around. She pulled away, climbing out of bed with her heart hammering. I'll let you know. When I've decided. When I've figured out if I'm brave enough to be reckless. You're already brave enough. You just need to believe it. Anita gathered her dress and heels, changing quickly in his bathroom to avoid the intimacy of dressing in front of him. When she emerged, Mike was standing by the window again, silhouetted against the morning light, looking every inch the powerful billionaire he was supposed to be. Except she knew the truth now. She'd seen behind the curtain, had held the vulnerable human hiding underneath all that wealth and success. And that made everything infinitely more complicated. The money, he said without turning around. I'll have it transferred to your account today. Mike, no arguments. We had a deal. You showed up, you gave me something invaluable, and I'm holding up my end. Use it for your mother. Use it for yourself. Use it to buy time while you figure out what you want. She wanted to protest, wanted to say that what they'd shared wasn't something that could be bought or sold. But practicality won out over pride. $50,000 was life-changing money. It was breathing room and security and the ability to make choices based on what she wanted rather than what she needed. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me. Not for this. Just think about what I said. About giving us a real chance. I will. I promise I will. She left before she could change her mind, before she could crawl back into his bed and say yes to everything he was offering. The elevator ride down felt like descending from heaven to earth, from possibility to reality. By the time she reached her car, the weight of what she'd done settled over her like a physical thing. She'd slept in her boss's bed. She'd accepted $50,000. She'd crossed every professional line and several personal ones. And somehow, the only thing she regretted was that she hadn't kissed him properly, that she'd held onto that one boundary like it could save her from the inevitable fall. The money appeared in her account Monday morning, exactly as Mike had promised. Anita stared at the number, at the zeros that represented so many possibilities, and burst into tears right there at her desk. She immediately paid off her mother's outstanding medical bills, scheduled the follow-up appointments they'd been delaying, and set up an automatic payment plan for the medications. Just like that, the crushing weight that had been suffocating her for months lifted. She should have felt relieved, should have felt grateful. Instead, she felt hollow, like she'd sold something precious and irretrievable for temporary comfort. Mike maintained professional distance at work, which should have been what she wanted, but instead felt like rejection. They passed in hallways without speaking beyond brief greetings. He didn't call her into his office for private consultations. They didn't exchange personal messages. It was like Friday night had never happened, like they'd never held each other and shared secrets and considered impossible futures. Except it had happened, and Anita couldn't stop thinking about it. On Wednesday, his brother Peter arrived from London. Anita had heard about Peter Craig, the charming younger brother who'd chosen to work in the European markets rather than compete directly with Mike. Rumor had it the brothers were estranged, that some family drama had driven Peter overseas years ago. But here he was, strolling into the office with movie star looks and an easy smile that seemed designed to make everyone fall in love with him. "You must be Anita Warren," he said, appearing at her desk with 2 coffees in hand. "I've heard incredible things about you." Mike won't shut up about his brilliant senior analyst. She accepted the coffee warily. "Mr. Craig." "Peter, please. Mr. Craig is my brother, and we're nothing alike." His smile widened. "I'm the fun one." Despite herself, Anita smiled back. Peter had an effortless charisma that Mike completely lacked, a warmth that seemed genuine even though warning bells rang in her head. "What brings you to New Jersey?" "Family business. Board meetings. Making sure my brother hasn't driven the company into the ground with his workaholic tendencies." He perched on the edge of her desk, completely comfortable in her space. "But mostly I wanted to meet the woman who is everyone talking." "People are talking about me?" "Oh, constantly. How you came from nowhere and became Mike's right hand in record time. How you're smarter than half the executives combined. How you turned down 3 competing offers because you believe in what we're building here." His eyes sparkled with mischief. "Though I suspect there might be another reason you're so loyal." Her stomach dropped. "I don't know what you mean." "Come on, Anita. I see the way Mike looks at you. Like you're the only person in the room, even when there are 50 others vying for his attention. And the way you carefully don't look at him. Like if you make eye contact, you'll give something away." He leaned in conspiratorially. "I'm not judging. I think it's sweet. Mike's been alone too long. He needs someone real." "There's nothing between us," she said automatically, hating how the lie tasted. "If you say so." He stood, straightening his absurdly expensive suit. "But for what it's worth, if there was something between you, I'd approve. You seem like exactly the kind of woman who could handle my brother's emotional constipation." Before she could respond to that absolutely inappropriate comment, Peter winked and strolled away, leaving her flustered and confused. What game was he playing? Why was he bringing up Mike's personal life? And why did his casual approval feel more like a threat than support? She didn't have long to wonder. That evening, as she was leaving, Peter intercepted her in the parking garage. "Anita, perfect timing. I'm starving, and I don't know any good restaurants around here. Join me for dinner." Every instinct screamed at her to decline. But Peter had positioned himself between her and her car, and refusing would mean either pushing past him or making a scene. Besides, maybe she could figure out what he actually wanted. "Sure," she heard herself say, "but somewhere casual. I'm not dressed for anything fancy. Casual is perfect. I'm tired of stuffy business dinners anyway." They ended up at a local Italian place, crowded and noisy and blessedly public. Peter was charming throughout the meal, asking about her background and career goals, seeming genuinely interested in her answers. He told stories about growing up as Mike's younger brother, about always being in his shadow, about their parents' impossible expectations. Mike was the golden child, he explained over pasta. Perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect everything. I was the screw-up who couldn't focus, who wanted to have fun instead of constantly achieving. Our father made it very clear who his favorite was. That must have been hard. It was. Something darker crossed his expression. Still is, sometimes. Mike got the company, the respect, the legacy. I got the consolation prize of European operations and the unspoken understanding that I'm not good enough for the real responsibility. Anita heard the bitterness underneath the casual tone. You seem pretty successful to me. Running international operations is no small feat. It's not running the company though, is it? It's not being the CEO, the face of Craig Industries, the one everyone respects and admires. He took a long drink of wine. Sorry. Family baggage. Not your problem. It's okay. I understand complicated family dynamics. Do you? He studied her intently. Mike mentioned your father died young. That you've been taking care of your mother. A chill ran down her spine. He told you that. We had drinks last night. Brother bonding. Trying to reconnect after years apart. Your name came up. A lot. Peter's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He's smitten with you, Anita. Completely gone. I've never seen him like this about anyone. Not even Vanessa. I'm his employee. That's all. Is it though? Peter leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, there's a lot more going on. And I want you to know, I'm happy for you both. Mike deserves someone who sees past the money and success. Someone authentic. The conversation felt like a trap, every word carefully calculated. Why are you really here, Peter? Honestly. He sat back, his expression shifting into something more genuine. I'm worried about my brother. He's been spiraling since Vanessa's interview, making impulsive decisions, not thinking clearly. And now he's fixated on you. And I just want to make sure. He trailed off, seeming to choose his words carefully. I want to make sure you're good for him. That this isn't going to blow up in both your faces. There's no this to blow up. Okay. If you say so. He signaled for the check. But if that changes, if things develop between you two, just know that I'm watching. Mike's my brother, and despite our differences, I want him to be happy. But I also don't want to see the company damaged by scandal or poor judgment. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Anita felt it like ice water down her back. Message received. Good. Peter's charming smile returned as if the tension had never existed. Now let's get you home. It's late, and I'm sure you have an early morning. He drove her to her car, was perfectly polite saying goodnight, and disappeared into the darkness like he'd never been there. But Anita sat in her driver's seat for a long time afterward, heart racing, trying to understand what had just happened. Peter knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough to be dangerous. And his concern for Mike felt performative, like he was playing a role rather than expressing genuine brotherly love. She needed to warn Mike, needed to tell him that his brother was asking questions and making veiled threats. But that would mean talking to Mike, really talking to him. And she'd been avoiding that for days because every time she saw him, she wanted to say yes to everything he'd offered, dating, exploration, impossible futures. And she wasn't ready to be that brave yet. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thanks for dinner. You're even more impressive in person than Mike described. Let's do this again soon. Peter. How had he gotten her personal number? She'd never given it to him, which meant either he'd taken it from company files or someone had given it to him, or another text appeared, this time from Mike. What are you doing with my brother? So he knew. Of course he knew. This company was his kingdom, and nothing happened without his awareness. She typed back. He invited me to dinner. Said he wanted to get to know the team. Stay away from Peter. Please. He's not what he seems. What is he then? The reply took several minutes. Dangerous. Ambitious. Willing to do whatever it takes to prove he's better than me. And right now, you're in the middle of that. Anita stared at the screen, her blood running cold. She'd been so focused on her own fears and feelings that she hadn't considered she might be walking into something much bigger and more dangerous than a forbidden office romance. Peter wasn't just Mike's brother. He was a rival, a threat, and apparently someone willing to use her as a weapon in whatever war they were fighting. We need to talk, she typed. My place. Tonight. Please. She should say no. Should maintain boundaries and distance, and all the smart things she'd been trying so hard to do. But if she was in danger, if Peter was playing some game she didn't understand, she needed to know what she was dealing with. Give me an hour. This time, when she rode the elevator to Mike's penthouse, it wasn't about money or propositions or testing boundaries. It was about survival and strategy and figuring out how to navigate waters that had suddenly become treacherous. The doors opened to reveal Mike pacing in front of those massive windows, still in his work clothes, looking like he'd been pulling his hair out. He spun when he heard her enter. Tell me everything, he demanded. Every word he said, every question he asked. I need to know what he's planning. So Anita told him. About the coffee and the dinner invitation and Peter's observations about Mike's feelings. About the subtle threats disguised as concern, the way he'd mentioned family legacy and scandal. about how he'd somehow obtained her personal cell number. Mike's face darkened with every sentence. He's building a case against me. Against us. There is no us. We haven't done anything wrong. Haven't we? He crossed to her in 3 long strides. You spent Friday night in my bed, Anita. I paid you $50,000. If Peter finds out about that and leaks it to the board or the media, we're both finished. You'll be labeled a woman who slept her way up, and I'll be the sleazy boss who bought sexual favors from his employee. Our careers, our reputations, everything burns. The panic in his voice mirrored her own rising terror. Why would he do that? He's your brother. He's my competition. He's always been my competition. Mike turned away, a hand running through his hair. When our father died, he left the company to me. Peter got money, properties, his choice of international positions, but not the crown jewel. Not the thing that proved you were worthy, that you'd won the game. He's resented me ever since. So what? He comes back to destroy you? By destroying me in the process. He'll do whatever it takes to prove I'm unfit to run Craig Industries. And a scandal involving an employee I'm sleeping with, especially after my very public breakup with Vanessa. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Anita sank onto his couch, legs suddenly unsteady. Then we tell the truth. We explain that nothing happened, that it was just talking and sleeping, nothing sexual. You think anyone will believe that? You think the board or shareholders or media will accept that I gave my employee $50,000 to spend the night talking? He laughed bitterly. I don't even believe it, and I was there. So what do? Mike came to sit beside her, his hand finding hers. We can get ahead of this. I can make a public statement that we're dating, that it started recently, and everything's been consensual and above board. HR can do an investigation and find nothing inappropriate. We weather the storm together instead of letting Peter control the narrative. You want to date me publicly? Now, when your brother is actively trying to sabotage you. I want to protect you. I want to protect what we have, even if it's new and undefined and scary. And I want to make sure Peter can't hurt you to get to me. He squeezed her hand desperately. I know it's fast. I know it's terrifying. But sometimes you have to make a move before your opponent does. Anita's mind raced through scenarios and consequences. If they went public, she'd face scrutiny and judgment and accusations of being Mike's flavor of the month. But if they didn't, if Peter exposed them on his terms, the damage would be catastrophic and permanent. At least this way, they controlled the story. Okay, she said slowly. But we do this right. We tell HR first, establish a timeline that makes sense, make it clear this is a real relationship that developed naturally. And we accept whatever consequences come from it. Ethics investigations, my potential transfer to another department, public relations nightmares. I'll protect you through all of it. You can't promise that. I can try. He lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that made her heart stutter. And I will try, Anita. Every single day, I'll try to be worthy of the risk you're taking. She wanted to believe him. God. She wanted to believe that this could work, that they could navigate Peter's machinations in corporate politics and build something real together. But doubt gnawed at her, whispering that she was being reckless, that she was throwing away everything she'd worked for because a billionaire made her feel alive. I'm terrified, she admitted. Me too. What if it doesn't work? What if we do all this, and we're not even compatible outside of one night of conversation? Then at least we'll know. At least we won't spend our lives wondering what if. He turned to face her fully. I know I'm asking you to bet everything on an unknown. I know that's not fair. But I'm betting everything too, Anita. My reputation, my company, my relationship with what's left of my family. I'm all in on you, on us, on the possibility that what we felt Friday night is real and worth fighting for. The sincerity in his eyes undid her. Here was this powerful, controlled man laying himself bare, admitting he was just as scared and uncertain as she was. They were both jumping off cliffs, both hoping they'd learn to fly before they hit the ground. Okay, she said again, stronger this time. Let's do this. Let's tell the truth, or a version of it, and see what happens. Yeah. But Mike. If we're doing this, if we're really doing this, then I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me this isn't just about winning against Peter. Promise me you actually want me, not just the idea of me or what I represent or how dating me might foil his plans. I need to know I'm not just a chess piece in your family drama. He cupped her face in both hands, his eyes fierce and honest. You're not a chess piece. You're the only real thing in my entire existence. You're the woman who sees past all my bullshit and calls me on it. You're brilliant and strong, and you make me want to be better than the cold corporate machine everyone thinks I am. This isn't about Peter or strategy or winning some game. This is about you and me and trying to build something genuine in a world that seems designed to keep us apart. Tears slipped down her cheeks. That was a really good answer. It's the truth. His thumbs brushed away her tears. I'm done pretending I don't feel things. I'm done being the emotionally unavailable robot Vanessa accused me of being. With you, I want to feel everything, even the scary parts. You make me want to be reckless, she whispered. Then be reckless with me. This time, when Anita leaned forward, she didn't stop at his forehead. She didn't maintain her boundaries or protect herself from the fall. She pressed her lips to his, softly at first, a question, a test. Mike froze for half a second, clearly surprised, before his hand slid into her hair and he kissed her back like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. The kiss was everything their careful conversation hadn't been, messy and desperate and absolutely perfect. Anita poured 3 years of suppressed attraction into it. All the times she'd caught herself staring at his mouth during meetings, all the moments she'd wondered what it would feel like to be wanted by someone like him. And Mike met her with equal intensity, like he'd been holding back for just as long and finally had permission to let go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. You said no kissing, he murmured. I changed the rules. I'm very glad you changed the rules. She laughed, giddy and terrified and more alive than she'd felt in years. What now? Now we call HR. We make this official. We prepare for whatever Peter throws at us. He pulled back to look at her seriously. And then, if you're willing, we go on an actual date. Somewhere nice where I can take you to dinner and hold your hand and kiss you goodnight at your door like a normal person courting someone they're crazy about. Courting? Did you seriously just use the word courting? I'm old-fashioned. Sue me. You're ridiculous. You like me anyway. She did. Despite all logic and self-preservation instinct, she really, really did. Yeah, she said softly. I really do. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other on his expensive couch, stealing kisses and making plans and pretending that the world outside wasn't about to become incredibly complicated. But eventually reality intruded, and Anita knew she needed to go home, needed to process everything that had happened, needed to prepare herself for what came next. Monday, Mike said as he walked her to the elevator. We'll set up a meeting with HR first thing Monday morning. Get everything documented and official. And Peter, let me handle Peter. Mike, I don't need you to. I know you don't need me to handle things for you. You're perfectly capable of fighting your own battles. But he's my brother, my responsibility, my mess. Let me deal with him while you focus on us. There's an us now? Officially, if you want there to be. His voice held a vulnerability that made her chest ache. I know we're doing this backwards, fighting external threats before we've even had a proper first date. But yeah, I want there to be in US. Very much. Then there's an us. She kissed him one more time, quick and sweet. But I reserve the right to panic about it extensively. Panic all you want. I'll be right here catching you if you fall. The elevator doors closed on his smile, and Anita descended back to ground level feeling like she'd just made either the best or worst decision of her life. Only time would tell which. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Anita dressed in her most professional suit, armor for the battle ahead, and arrived at Craig Industries an hour early. Mike met her in the parking garage, looking equally nervous and determined. Ready? He asked. Absolutely not. Let's do this anyway. They walked into the HR director's office together and spent the next 2 hours explaining their situation to Margaret Shun, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd seen every workplace drama imaginable. To her credit, Margaret's expression remained neutral throughout their carefully edited story, that they'd developed feelings over the past few months working closely together, that the relationship was new and consensual, that they wanted to be transparent and follow proper protocols. You understand this will require an ethics review, Margaret said, making notes on her tablet. Ms. Warren, you'll need to be reassigned to a different supervisor. We can't have you reporting directly to Mr. Craig while you're involved romantically. It creates too many conflicts of interest. I understand, Anita said, even though the thought of losing her position made her stomach drop. I'll still consult with her on projects, Mike interjected. Her insights are too valuable to the company to lose completely. That can be arranged, within appropriate boundaries. Margaret looked between them with something that might have been sympathy. I appreciate you coming forward proactively. It shows integrity. But I won't lie to you. This will be messy. There will be gossip, speculation, accusations of favoritism. Ms. Warren especially will face scrutiny about whether she earned her position or slept her way into it. I earned every promotion, Anita said firmly. My work speaks for itself. I know that. You know that. But perception matters in corporate environments. Margaret closed her tablet. I'll begin the formal review process today. In the meantime, keep the relationship discreet. No public displays at work, no preferential treatment, absolute professionalism. And Ms. Warren, I'd suggest you start looking at lateral moves to other departments. Same pay grade, similar responsibilities, but outside Mr. Craig's direct purview. They agreed to everything, signed the necessary paperwork, and walked out feeling like they'd just survived the first round of a boxing match. But at least it was official, documented, above board. If Peter tried to weaponize their relationship now, they had proof they'd done everything right. Except they hadn't done everything right, and they both knew it. The $50,000 hung between them like a guilty secret. They hadn't mentioned it to HR, hadn't disclosed that their relationship had started with a transaction. And if that came out, when that came out, because secrets always came out, it would destroy any credibility they'd just established. We should have told her, Anita said quietly as they rode the elevator to the executive floor. Told her what? That I made an inappropriate offer, and you initially accepted? That would have ended both our careers immediately. Mike's jaw was tight. What happened Friday night stays between us. No one else needs to know. Peter knows something's going on. He suspects. He doesn't know. And as long as we present a united front, he can't prove anything. The elevator doors opened, and Mike's professional mask slid back into place. Trust me on this, Anita. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. She wanted to argue, but colleagues were already arriving, curious eyes tracking their emergence from the same elevator. The gossip would start immediately, it always did. By lunch, everyone would know that Mike Craig and Anita Warren had shown up together and disappeared into HR's office for 2 hours. Speculation would run rampant. Anita threw herself into work, trying to ignore the whispers and sideways glances. She had a presentation due Wednesday on Q4 projections, and focusing on numbers felt safer than dwelling on the complicated mess her life had become. But concentration proved impossible when Peter appeared at her desk around noon, that easy smile fixed in place. Lunch? He offered, holding up a bag from an expensive bistro downtown. I figured you'd be too busy to get away, so I brought food to you. That's thoughtful, but I'm really swamped. Come on. Everyone needs to eat. Besides, I wanted to apologize for the other night. I came on a bit strong with all my questions about Mike. Family drama bleeding into professional relationships. Totally inappropriate. His sincerity seemed genuine, but Anita's instincts screamed warnings. It's fine. Really. It's not fine. I made you uncomfortable, and I'm sorry. He gestured to the conference room. 20 minutes. Just lunch between colleagues. I promised to keep it light. Refusing would cause a scene. Accepting meant playing whatever game Peter was running. Anita chose the lesser evil. 20 minutes. The conference room felt too intimate with just the two of them. Peter unpacked gourmet sandwiches and salads, making small talk about the weather in London and how much he'd missed American coffee. But Anita could feel him building towards something, circling his real agenda like a shark scenting blood. So, he said casually, I heard you and Mike had a meeting with HR this morning. There it was. News travels fast. This building's a gossip factory. Everyone's speculating about what it means. Two executives in HR for hours, emerging looking shell-shocked. He took a bite of his sandwich, all innocent curiosity. Care to share? It was routine compliance stuff. For 2 hours? On a Monday morning? Peter's smile didn't waver, but his eyes sharpened. Come on, Anita. We're practically family now. You can tell me. We're not family. Not yet. But if you and Mike are dating, which seems to be the prevailing theory, then eventually we might be. Sister-in-law has a nice ring to it. The presumption took her breath away. You're making a lot of assumptions based on gossip. Am I? He leaned forward, and now the charm had edges. Because from where I'm sitting, things add up interestingly. Mike's been obsessed with you for months. You suddenly have enough money to pay off your mother's medical bills. Yes, I checked. Connections are useful that way. You spent Friday night somewhere that wasn't your apartment. And now you're both in HR establishing a paper trail. Anita's blood ran cold. You had someone investigate me? I had someone verify a hunch. And what they found was fascinating. $50,000 appeared in your account Friday, transferred from one of Mike's personal accounts. The same day you left work early and didn't come home until Saturday morning. Peter sat back, satisfaction radiating from him. Want to revise your story about routine compliance? She should have felt trapped, panicked, desperate. Instead, rage flooded through her, hot and clarifying. You're blackmailing me. I'm protecting my family's company from scandal. There's a difference. What do you want? Simple. I want you to end whatever this is with Mike. Tell him it was a mistake, that you can't risk your career, whatever excuse you need. And then I want you to forget about the $50,000, consider it severance, and find employment elsewhere. And if I don't, Peter's smile turned cruel. Then I go to the board with evidence that Mike paid an employee for sexual favors. I'll have bank records, timeline documentation, witness statements about you leaving his building Saturday morning. It'll be a spectacular scandal. Mike will be forced to resign in disgrace. You'll be unemployable in this industry. And I'll be there to pick up the pieces and save the company. This is insane. You destroy your own brother? He destroyed me first. The mask slipped, revealing raw bitterness underneath. Every day of my childhood, being compared to perfect Mike. Every accomplishment overshadowed by his greater successes. Our fathers were making it crystal clear who he valued. Do you know what it's like living in someone's shadow your entire life? Always second best, never quite good enough. So this is revenge? You're willing to ruin innocent lives because you're jealous? I'm taking what should have been mine from the beginning. The company, the respect, the legacy. And if Mike chose to make it messy by involving you, well, that's on him. Peter stood, packing up the lunch remains. You have until Friday to decide. End it and leave quietly, or watch everything burn. Your choice. He left her sitting there, shaking with fury and fear. Anita waited until she was sure he was gone before pulling out her phone with trembling hands. We need to talk, she texted Mike. Now? Your office. His door was closed when she arrived, but she walked in anyway, past his startled assistant's protests. Mike looked up from his computer, immediately reading the distress on her face. What happened? Peter knows. About the money, about Friday night, everything. He has bank records and timelines, and he's threatening to go to the board if I don't end things with you and quit. Mike's face went white, then red with rage. That son of a bitch. He wants the company. He's always wanted the company. And he's willing to destroy both of us to get it. Anita paced his office like a caged animal. We have to tell the truth. Go back to HR. Explain everything before he weaponizes it. It's the only way. No. Mike's voice was flat, absolute. We do that, and we're finished anyway. At least Peter's way. You walk away with your reputation intact. My reputation? Mike, he's blackmailing us. And if we fight him, we lose everything. But if you leave now, claim it was just a brief attraction that you decided wasn't worth pursuing, you can move on to another company with glowing recommendations and no scandal attached to your name. Anita stopped pacing, staring at him in disbelief. You want me to leave? I want you safe. I want you to have the career you've worked so hard for. I want you to not be collateral damage in my family's dysfunction. That's not your choice to make. It's the right choice. He stood, coming around his desk, but maintaining distance. Anita, I should never have made that offer. I should never have put you in this position. Everything that's happening now is my fault, and I won't let you pay for my mistakes. Don't you dare. Tears burned her eyes. Don't you dare take the choice away from me. I'm not some damsel who needs saving. I'm an adult who can make my own decisions about my life and career, even if that decision destroys everything you've built. Yes, even then. She closed the distance between them, grabbing his arms. Mike, we did nothing wrong. We're two consenting adults who developed feelings for each other. The money was a stupid, impulsive gesture, but nothing sexual happened. Nothing unethical happened. We can fight this. And when Peter produces witnesses who'll swear they saw you leaving my building at dawn, when he spins it as a pattern of sexual harassment and abuse of power, when the media runs with it and your face is plastered on every gossip site with speculation about what you had to do to get ahead. He pulled away from her grip. I won't do that to you. So you'll just let him win? Let him take everything you've built. If it means protecting you, yes. Absolutely yes. The quiet conviction in his voice broke something inside her. Mike Craig, powerful, ruthless, always 10 steps ahead, was willing to sacrifice everything for her. It was romantic and tragic and completely unacceptable. I'm not leaving, she said firmly. I'm not running away because your brother is a manipulative asshole. We're going to fight him, and we're going to win, and we're going to do it together. Anita. Together, Mike. That's what relationships are. You don't get to make unilateral decisions about my life just because you think you're protecting me. We're partners, or we're nothing. He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Then he laughed, bitter and genuine at the same time. You're too brave for your own good. I'm the right amount of brave. She took his hands, holding on tight. Now tell me, how do we beat Peter at his own game? The plan they formulated was risky, possibly illegal, and absolutely necessary. If Peter had evidence, they needed better evidence. If he was planning to go to the board, they needed to go first. If he wanted to play dirty, they'd show him what dirty really looked like. Mike called an emergency board meeting for Thursday morning. Not enough time for Peter to mount a proper counterattack. Then he reached out to his lawyer, his PR team, and a private investigator he'd used before for corporate espionage cases. By Tuesday evening, they had their strategy. They would tell the complete truth. The offer, the night spent talking, the genuine connection that developed, and the money transferred as originally agreed, even though nothing sexual occurred. They would present it as an unconventional beginning to a real relationship, acknowledging the poor judgment, but emphasizing the consensual nature and subsequent appropriate disclosure to HR. And they would expose Peter's blackmail attempt with recordings Anita had secretly made of their lunch conversation. It was a gamble. The board might still force Mike to resign. Anita might still face professional consequences. But at least they'd be controlling the narrative instead of letting Peter burn them with lies and manipulation. Wednesday night, Anita couldn't sleep. She lay in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible outcome. Best case, the board accepted their explanation, Peter was exposed as the villain, and they emerged with their careers intact. Worst case, they both lost everything and had to start over from scratch. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mike. Can't sleep either. Thinking about tomorrow. Regrets. She considered lying, but they'd built this relationship on honesty. Yes and no. I regret that it has to be this hard. I don't regret you. I don't deserve you. You deserve someone who sees you. Who wants you for who you are, not what you represent. That's all I've ever been. Someone who sees you. A long pause, then, come over. Please. I don't want to face tomorrow alone. Anita should have said no. Should have maintained boundaries and professionalism and all the smart things they'd been trying to do. But she was tired of being smart. She was tired of protecting herself at the cost of connection. 20 minutes later, she was in his penthouse, wrapped in his arms on his bed, both fully clothed, just holding each other like lifelines. They didn't talk about the meeting or Peter or what might happen. They just existed together, breathing in sync, finding comfort in presence. Whatever happens tomorrow, Mike murmured into her hair. I want you to know I don't regret any of this. Not the offer, not the complications, not falling for you faster than logic says possible. You're falling for me? I fell weeks ago. Months maybe. I was just too stubborn to admit it. Anita smiled against his chest. That's very inconvenient timing. The heart doesn't care about timing. No, she agreed softly. It really doesn't. They fell asleep like that, and for a few hours, the world outside ceased to exist. There was no Peter, no board meeting, no scandal waiting to explode. Just two people who'd found each other against all odds and were determined to fight for what they'd built. Thursday morning arrived too quickly. Anita dressed in her most powerful suit, red, bold, unapologetic. If she was going down, she was going down blazing. Mike picked her up, and they drove to Craig Industries together, making no effort to hide their arrival. By now, everyone knew something was happening. They might as well own it. The boardroom was already full when they entered, 12 executives in expensive suits, all watching with varying degrees of curiosity and judgment. Peter sat at the far end, his expression carefully neutral, but Anita caught the flash of triumph in his eyes. He thought he'd already won. Mike stood at the head of the table, commanding the room with the same authority he'd always possessed. Thank you all for coming on short notice. I've called this meeting to address concerns about my personal conduct and to expose an attempted coup within Craig Industries. That got everyone's attention. Peter's mask slipped for just a second, surprise, then fury, before snapping back into place. As many of you have heard, I'm in a relationship with Anita Warren, one of our senior analysts. Mike gestured for her to stand beside him, and she did, chin high despite her racing heart. This relationship developed over the past several months through close professional collaboration. We've disclosed it to HR, followed all appropriate protocols, and Ms. Warren is being reassigned to avoid conflicts of interest. That's not the issue, Peter interrupted smoothly. The issue is how the relationship started. The financial transaction that preceded it. The abuse of power dynamics. You mean the $50,000 I gave Ms. Warren? Mike's voice was calm, controlled. Yes, let's discuss that. I made Ms. Warren an offer, inappropriate, impulsive, and not my finest moment. I offered her money to spend one night with me, not for sex, but for company. For genuine human connection, without the games and expectations that usually accompany my attempts at relationships. Murmurs rippled through the room. Anita felt every eye on her, judging, speculating, condemning. Ms. Warren initially refused. Mike continued. As any person with self-respect would. But due to financial pressures involving her mother's medical care, she reconsidered. We spent that evening talking. Just talking. About our lives, our fears, our loneliness. Nothing sexual occurred. And yes, I gave her the money I'd offered because I am a man of my word, and because she deserved support that I was in a position to provide. That's prostitution, one board member said flatly. Paying for company, even non-sexual company, is still a transaction. It was a stupid gesture from a lonely man, Mike countered. But it led to genuine connection. Ms. Warren and I developed real feelings. We chose to explore those feelings within appropriate professional boundaries. That's not scandal. That's two adults navigating attraction in a complicated situation. By paying her, Peter's voice dripped contempt. You paid your employee for her time and affection. That's not romance, brother. That's exploitation. Anita had heard enough. May I speak? All eyes turned to her. She felt the weight of judgment, the assumptions about who she was and why she was here. But she'd spent her entire career proving people wrong about her. This was just one more battle. I want to be very clear about something, she said, her voice steady and strong. I am not a victim. Mike Craig did not exploit me or pressure me or abuse his power. He made a clumsy offer from a place of pain, and I chose to accept it on my own terms. What happened that night was two lonely people finding unexpected connection. The money gave us the excuse to spend time together without workplace complications, but the feelings that developed were real and mutual. You're defending him because you have to, Peter interjected. Because your career depends on it. I'm defending the truth because I'm tired of men telling me what I think and feel. Anita turned her full attention to Peter, letting her contempt show. And since we're discussing manipulation and exploitation, let's talk about your role in all of this. She nodded to Mike, who pulled out his phone and connected it to the boardroom's display system. Peter's face appeared on the screen from the lunch conversation Anita had secretly recorded. I had someone investigate me? Her own voice played back, tinny through the speakers. You had someone verify a hunch. They let the whole recording play. Peter's veiled threats, his admission of jealousy, his ultimatum that she leave or watch everything burn. By the end, the boardroom was silent with shock. This is my brother, Mike said quietly. The man who wants to take over Craig Industries. A man willing to blackmail, threaten, and destroy innocent people to get what he believes he's owed. Is this who you want leading this company? Peter was on his feet, face flushed with rage. That recording is inadmissible. She made it without my consent. This isn't a court of law, Mike shot back. This is a board meeting. And the board deserves to know what kind of man is asking them to remove me. You paid your employee for sex. I paid a woman I was attracted to for company, and then we fell in love. Mike's voice cracked with emotion. I'm guilty of poor judgment, of letting loneliness drive decisions, of being a flawed human being. But I'm not guilty of exploitation or abuse. And I won't let you destroy someone I care about just to satisfy your decade-old grudge. The silence that followed felt eternal. Anita watched the board members processing everything. The recording, Mike's confession, her defense of their relationship. She had no idea which way this would fall. Finally, the board chair, a distinguished woman named Patricia Hernandez, spoke. "This is highly irregular. Mr. Craig, your behavior was inappropriate, regardless of intent. Ms. Warren, your position here is untenable given the circumstances. And Peter," she turned to him with cold disdain. "Blackmail and corporate espionage are grounds for immediate termination and possibly criminal charges." "I was protecting the company," Peter protested. "You were serving your own ambition. Don't insult our intelligence by claiming otherwise." Patricia looked around the table, gauging reactions. "I propose we vote on 3 items. First, whether Mike Craig retains his position as CEO pending an ethics review. Second, whether Peter Craig is removed from all positions within Craig Industries. Third, whether Ms. Warren is allowed to transfer to a lateral position in another department with no negative impact on her career trajectory." The votes happened quickly. Mike kept his CEO position by a narrow margin, 7-5, with clear disapproval but acknowledgement that he'd been transparent and followed protocols after the initial mistake. Peter was removed unanimously, escorted from the building by security while he shouted threats about lawsuits and retaliation. And Anita received unanimous support for her transfer, with several board members commenting on her obvious competence and the unfairness of punishing her for Mike's actions. When it was over, when the boardroom finally emptied and it was just the two of them standing there, Anita felt like she might collapse. "We survived," Mike said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Barely. But we survived together. That counts for something." It counted for everything. They'd gone to war for each other, had risked everything, and had come out the other side battered but intact. Not unscathed. There would be consequences, gossip, judgment that followed them for years. But they'd faced it together, and that made all the difference. "Take me home," Anita said softly. "You're home. I don't want to be alone tonight." 3 months later, Anita stood in a different office, same pay grade, better view, no complicated power dynamics. She'd transferred to strategic development, where her analytical skills shaped long-term company vision. The gossip had eventually died down, replaced by newer scandals and office drama. People still whispered sometimes, still speculated about her relationship with the CEO, but it mattered less when her work continued to speak for itself. Mike had been true to his word. No preferential treatment, no using their relationship to influence business decisions. They were scrupulously professional at work, saving their personal connection for evenings and weekends. It was hard sometimes, maintaining boundaries when all she wanted was to kiss him in the elevator or hold his hand in meetings. But it was necessary. Her mother's health had stabilized with proper care and medication. Anita no longer woke in the middle of the night panicking about bills. The $50,000 had bought her breathing room and peace of mind, and she'd stopped feeling guilty about accepting it. It had been a catalyst, unconventional, yes, but ultimately leading to positive change. She was happy, genuinely, surprisingly happy. Mike made her laugh, challenged her thinking, and supported her ambitions without trying to control them. They'd navigated the choppy waters of new relationships and corporate scrutiny and family drama, and somehow they were still standing. Peter had filed a wrongful termination lawsuit that was going nowhere. His reputation in the industry had taken a massive hit, and the last Anita heard, he'd moved to Singapore to rebuild his career far from his brother's shadow. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But you couldn't spend your life resenting other people's success and expect anything but bitterness. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mike. "Dinner tonight? Got news. Good news or bad news?" "Good. Very good." They met at their favorite restaurant. Not too fancy, not too casual, just right for two people who'd learned to appreciate simple pleasures together. Mike was already there when she arrived, and the smile on his face told her whatever news he had was significant. "Tell me," she demanded, sliding into the booth across from him. "The board voted today. Formal censure for my actions is officially closed. I'm clear, Anita. Completely clear. No more ethics review, no more oversight committee, no more waiting for the other shoe to drop." Relief flooded through her. "That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. Your willingness to fight, to stand beside me when it would have been easier to run," his voice caught. "You saved me, Anita. In every possible way. We saved each other." She reached across the table, taking his hand. That's what partners do. Speaking of partners, he pulled something from his pocket, and her heart stopped. Not a ring box. Too soon for that. They both knew it, but a small velvet bag. I got you something. To celebrate surviving our first major crisis. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant shaped like a phoenix. The symbolism wasn't subtle, but it was perfect. Rising from the ashes, she said, tears pricking her eyes. Exactly. Everything we thought would destroy us only made us stronger. He stood, moving to her side of the booth to fasten it around her neck. His fingers lingered on her skin, and she shivered. I love you, Anita Warren. I know it's fast and complicated and probably too soon to say it, but I don't care. I love you. I love you too, she whispered, and it felt like jumping off another cliff, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Even though you drive me crazy sometimes. Especially because I drive you crazy sometimes. They kissed there in the restaurant, not caring who saw, not worried about professional boundaries or corporate policies. Because they'd fought for this, had earned this, and no one could take it away from them. Later, curled up together in his penthouse, their penthouse now, since she'd officially moved in last month, Anita reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. From that first shocking offer to this comfortable domesticity, they'd traveled an impossible distance. There would be more challenges ahead. There always were. But they'd face them together, as equals, as partners. What are you thinking? Mike murmured against her hair. That I'm glad I said yes. That night you made your ridiculous offer, when every logical part of me screamed to run. I'm glad I ignored logic and took a chance. Best $50,000 I ever spent. You're terrible. You love me anyway. Unfortunately, yes. I really do. And there in the darkness, with the city lights painting shadows across the walls and the man she loved holding her close, Anita finally felt like she'd found home. Not in a place or a job or a financial situation, but in another person who saw her completely and loved her anyway. It wasn't the conventional love story people expected. But then again, nothing about them had ever been conventional. And that was perfectly fine with her. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. This is just the beginning of Mike and Anita's story. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Will Peter return for revenge? How will Mike and Anita navigate their future together? What challenges still await them? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Did Anita make the right choice? Would you have taken Mike's offer? What should happen in the next chapter of their story? And if you love this story, share it with someone who needs a reminder that love is worth fighting for, even when it's complicated, messy, and completely unexpected. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best things in life come from the risks we're brave enough to take.